Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and thank you for tuning into a brand new episode of The Nation Wants to Know. I'm Deepti Sachdeva. The Nation and I think people across the world today want to know whether this is going to be a major turning point in the war that you're seeing right now playing out between Israel and Iran. Is this possibly going to be leading to a ceasefire, a very elusive ceasefire? On your screens, in fact, we'll bring up that image yet again, that image that has gone viral ever since late last evening when for the very first time there's confirmation that Sinwar has now been eliminated. Till now, remember, 5 top commanders, the top 5 heads of the Hamas there have been eliminated as far as this big story is concerned. So what should happen next? How was he tracked down? Were there hostages? Was there retaliatory fire? For the very first time, we have the IDF's international spokesperson joining us. And this, remember, is an exclusive here on Times Now. I want to say good evening to Major Doron Spielman, who's with us now. Major Doron, thank you so much for your time. For the very first time you're speaking to an Indian channel here, I want to know from you, how did you guys track down Sinwar? Was there intel? You were hot on his heels for the last at least 1 year. What was the initial information that got you started to, this elimination?
Thank you, first of all, Deepti, so much for having me. This certainly is a day that I think everyone in the world can relate to. This is our Osama bin Laden day. It's a day where the people of Israel had an arch terrorist, like you said, one of 5, but really one that stood on his own, that had gone into our homes, ripped people from their beds, slaughtered men, women, and children, abducted them, brought them back to Gaza, and bombed Israeli cities. It is truly a arch evil type terrorist. And yesterday was a day where the sun came out, and with hard work from our soldiers and a little bit of luck, we managed to eliminate him. To tell you how it happened was that our soldiers have been operating in southern Gaza, closing in on what we knew was an area where there were major terrorists operating. We received intelligence that there were top Hamas terrorists. And the way that we decided to go about it is our soldiers began closing in from neighborhood to neighborhood, closing down those terror tunnels, eliminating buildings that were in the way, and slowly concentrating them into a tight area. The hope was that, almost like a rodent, where it tries to scurry from place to place when it hears a person coming, that Sinwar would come out of his tunnel and try to take shelter in a nearby structure. That is, in fact, what he did. He went into a building that had already been shelled and was abandoned. But our troops, using great intelligence and strong work, saw 3 shapes in that building. They carefully approached, but when they got close, grenades were thrown at our troops. So they moved backwards out of the way, and a tank shell fired 2 rounds at the building. At which time we could see that the 3 terrorists scattered. 2 went in one direction. Our troops then eliminated them. And 1 terrorist moved to another abandoned building up to the 2nd floor. We flew a drone in, which you're showing on your screen right now. The drone went into the building right through the opening. You could see it passing couches. And there in the far corner looks to be a jihadi terrorist. In fact, that is Sinwar. He tries to throw an object at the drone. Eventually, the drone pulls out. The tank fires a shell, the building's taken down. And when our soldiers went to sweep the area, they saw a terrorist lying on the ground in the rubble that resembled Sinwar. Later, dental records and DNA checking showed that that man, that evil man, has been brought to justice, met his fate, and is no longer on this planet.
You say he's met his fate, and this is like an Osama bin Laden moment for you. Very, very, I think it's a very important and a turning point then, Major Doron, in this entire war. Tell me something. The next obvious question that people will ask is, will this lead to some kind of a ceasefire? But before you answer that question, I was also reading reports that said that he possibly was traveling from one home to the other home desperately, seeking to avoid detection. And he's the same man who is the mastermind of the October 7th attack. So what were those last moments like? What was those, last movements by this man like?
Well, what we see is Sinwar is a coward. Sinwar, didn't plan major attacks against our troops. He went in right into civilian communities where mothers and fathers and babies and children were sleeping in their beds. That's how he began October 7th, and that's how he ended yesterday. He was fleeing for his own life. He wasn't acting for the people of Gaza, trying to return our hostages so they can rebuild. He had money on him, enough money that dozens of people in Gaza would have been happy to have as a yearly salary. He had documents. He was being protected, and he was just concerned with himself, trying to flee. And that's how he eventually met his fate. I think it's a fitting end to a man that is the opposite of a hero, is truly a coward who is no longer here. For us, from a military perspective, this is a very important achievement. It means that the head of Hamas is now out of the way. There is a shakeup in the Hamas terrorism establishment, which could present an opportunity. You talked about a ceasefire. I think for us, it could present the conditions for a cessation of hostilities, which would be the returning of our hostages, the cessation of shelling of Israeli cities, and the dismemberment and disbanding of Hamas. He was against doing those. He wouldn't return our hostages. He kept shelling our cities and refused to let Hamas die. If a new leader comes in, or the people of Gaza stand up and they say, we want a future, this could be the golden moment. I'll tell you something, Deepti, I myself am certainly praying for that.
I think the world is also doing that, Major. Now, tell me something. Were there any hostages? There is a lot of conversation about the hostages. You know, as I was walking into the studio, you know, there was some bit of information flashing in from the Hamas. Though, you know, we've not been able to confirm this, but apparently Hamas says that nothing doing, we are not releasing the hostages. And there is another bit of information that apparently Sinwar's brother now is going to be heading, you know, this terror outfit.
First of all, there were no hostages with Yahya Sinwar, and we assume that is because he was fleeing for his life, and he felt that he needed to leave as little of a footprint as possible. He had two people who were, from the very beginning, in charge of protecting him. He had no technology on him, and he was trying to avoid detection. The best way he probably thought to do that was not to be around the hostages, but was to try to act on his own. Perhaps he was trying to escape out of Gaza. We don't have confirmation on that yet. The rumors of who's going to replace him, there are many. Certainly his brother, Muhammad Sinwar, is another arch-terrorist. But as you and I both know, we have already shown the world we've eliminated Yahya Sinwar, we've eliminated Ismail Khania, we eliminated Muhammad Diaf, we eliminated Hassan Nasrallah, and whoever takes over Hamas, if they are going to continue to terrorize the people of Israel, they will be eliminated as well until Hamas falls like a house of cards and is not here anymore to terrorize Israel. And this is also a message to Iran. Iran is the greatest world sponsor of terrorism. All of us, India, United States, Europe, everyone is affected by Iran. This shows Iran, you can have your proxies, but they're not going to survive. And you, Iran, by threatening Israel with 181 ballistic missiles, you will also have a price to pay. Evil does not pay.
Okay, you say evil does not pay. Clearly it doesn't. Now, will this, you know, bring an end to the war in Gaza? I do know there was a conversation between Biden and Netanyahu also, and there was a lot of, you know, push towards some kind of a ceasefire. Do you believe that is possible, or there is still some bit of time before you know, look for that kind of a window to be able to say that, okay, for the moment, we can cease hostilities?
Look, from day one, already from October 8th, we already said that we don't even need to go into Gaza. We didn't want to go into Gaza. We don't want to risk the lives of our soldiers, of our children. All we asked for was those three very legitimate demands: that Israeli cities don't come under shell fire, that you return the hostages that you brutally take, and you dismember the organization that carried out this massacre. Those could have happened on October 8th over a year ago. If they happen tomorrow, I certainly will be grateful. Again, that is what Israel wants. Israel has no mission whatsoever. No one woke up in Israel on October 6th and said, let's go conquer Gaza. We're not interested. What we are interested in is securing our people. If this presents an opportunity by removing an arch-terrorist, we will be the first ones to take advantage of that opportunity. And I'll tell you who else is looking for that opportunity. The videos that I've been saying that have been sent to me from Telegram and other places show Gazans. The Gazan people themselves are celebrating. There's a man standing there with 8 children behind him, speaking Hebrew, speaking to the Israelis from inside Gaza, a Gaza man. He says, today is the greatest day of my life. We want peace. Now that Sinwar is gone, maybe we can have it. We need to be very, very diligent and continue fighting Hamas until this war ends, both for Israel and the people of Gaza.
Okay, and what about the hostages? What's the number we are talking about, and what is the next plan of securing the hostages?
There are 101 hostages, which, as we're speaking, are being held in the terror dungeons beneath Gaza. It is a source of enormous pain for every Israeli. We're a very small country of 10 million people. We know all the families. We know the hostages. We see their faces and names everywhere. We are acting on intelligence to try to bring them home as quickly as possible. And we are hoping that with the elimination of Yahya Sinwar, this will be an opportunity for us to further that goal. Trust me, we're working on it day and night.
And, Major, there's a lot of chatter, a lot of people still, who will say Israel here is the aggressor. You've avenged October the 7th. You've eliminated the Hamas and its top leadership. Why don't we call it quits? What would you say to them?
As soon as 101 people that are inside those dungeons in Gaza are rescued and brought home, we are more than happy to cease this current interaction in Gaza. The aggressor here is the man on the screen, Yahya Sinwar, and Hamas, who planned for 20 years to attack Israel and kill Israeli civilians. There has rarely been an aggressor as evil as he is in the world. Anyone who calls Israel the aggressor is giving Yahya Sinwar and Hamas a pass, which encourages terrorism throughout the world. If terrorists think that the world is going to call them heroes, then they'll continue on their path. But we now have an opportunity. When we see Yahya Sinwar caught like a rat, died, eliminated by IDF forces, along with other heads of terrorism, we're on the right path. Terrorists throughout the world are watching. Is the West, is the East, and are Israel going to stand strong to terrorism? If we stand strong together, then terrorists will get the message and we will see a brighter day.
And when you say this, what is the kind of timeline possibly we are looking at? And, because you've also been a part of this operation. Now, tell me something. Can we as a world afford this escalation, this war? And what if you have Iran and its proxies now wanting to escalate? I mean, are you prepared for that?
Iran has been escalating. The escalation has begun with Iran going back 15 years. When Iran began taking over communities, they took over southern Lebanon, moved out the Lebanese army and put in tens of thousands of Hezbollah fighters, which on October 8th, they launched. Since October 8th, 2023, they've launched over 9,000 rockets at northern Israel. They empowered the Houthis, which have stopped trade in Yemen and have fired ballistic missiles at Israel. They have militias in Iraq and Iran. Iran has escalated this to a point in which Israel, imagine India or any other country throughout the world, if they were being attacked by ballistic missiles, by an army that raided over the border and killed their men, women, and children, you would also fight for your survival. We are fighting for our survival. We have no choice, and we are going to be successful.
Okay. And, in this war against terror, what has been the US's role? If you could talk about that, there is, again, a lot of, I think, curiosity about the fact whether the U.S. was involved in this operation, though Pentagon has said, we had nothing to do with this. But what is it that you can tell us?
The U.S. is a great ally of Israel. We're very, very close allies. And they definitely, along this way, have supported our war efforts. They understand that we are fighting for our survival. And they, as one of the most powerful nations in the world, have stood on the right side of history by supporting the people of Israel, both with ammunition and needed ammunition, but also with intelligence sharing on the highest level. This particular episode of the elimination of Yahya Sinwar, the United States was not directly involved in. As I mentioned, it was a good stroke of good luck, but they are by our side. And again, that also sends an important message. Those who have called Israel the aggressor and have condemned Israel, they are going to look back. Their countries will look back 100 years from now, and they'll be ashamed. This is the moment to stand with Israel. It is a very simple equation. We were attacked inside our borders. We are continuing to be attacked. We're defending ourselves against evil, which is terrorism, just like you would do. Stand on the right side of history, both for you and for your children who will be looking back at your actions.
And why are there still some people who believe that this is Israel also kind of pushing for a regime change in Iran? Is that true? Is that even a part of the plan, part of the larger goals?
I am not at all aware of those types of goals. What I can tell you is that I think if we look at the regime in Iran, it's, first of all, most unfortunate for the people of Iran, many of whom I think who are suffering under that vicious radical regime. We saw them took to the streets with no weapons, just protesting, and they were gunned down by the troops in Iran and Tehran. And it was so sad to see those people trying to stand for freedom and just defenseless. And I think the world needs to look at Iran. Iran is a world problem. It is a global issue. They are on your border, they're on our border, and they have the capacity to reach almost any country in the world. The world needs to band together and be courageous and stamp out the evil in Iran. Israel will do what it needs to do to defend itself, but Iran is a global issue. We all have to work together on Iran.
Yes, and Benjamin Netanyahu earlier has said this is the beginning of the end. So, Major, tell me, what are the next few days to the next few weeks looking like? What are you all prepared for? What should the world be prepared for?
We are continuing to be vigilant in defending our borders. There was a terror attack not that long ago on our eastern border near the Dead Sea. There are militias in the north, Hezbollah and Hamas. Our soldiers are well trained, and we know that we have no choice but to be successful. We are continuing to operate on various fronts, gathering intelligence and preparing actions that will be precise actions that will weaken our enemies to the point at which they realize it's not worth it for you to mess with Israel. You might think that you're going to get away with it, just like Yahya Sinwar may have thought he was going to get away with it. But all of you, all of the enemies out there will eventually be brought to justice, whether it takes a day or a year and a week, like it did with Yahya Sinwar. We will do what it takes. That's what we're focused on, and that's what will bring peace to Israel and hopefully peace to the Middle East. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm greatly appreciative, both to you and your viewers. Thank you for looking at the facts and supporting Israel.
Thank you so much, Major Doron Spielman, for your time, for your perspective, and those inside details, for speaking to us here on Times Now. Pleasure speaking to you. We'll continue to track that story. With this, we also head into a quick break. On the other side, remember, there's lots more that we are coming back with.